A wild fox discovered a helpless German shepherd puppy alone in the woods, and what happened next will completely change how you see nature. This isn't just another animal story. It's a tale of survival, unexpected friendship, and a miracle that defied all odds. Get ready for a journey that will leave you speechless. The morning mist hung thick over the Montana wilderness as Sarah Mitchell drove down the winding forest road. A wildlife photographer by profession, she often ventured into these remote areas seeking the perfect shot. But today would be different. Today would change everything. As she rounded a bend, something caught her eye. A small bundle of golden brown fur lay motionless near the roadside. Sarah's heart sank. She'd seen too many animals hit by careless drivers. But as she approached, the bundle moved. It was a German shepherd puppy, barely 8 weeks old. His ribs were visible beneath his matted fur, and his baby blue eyes looked up at her with a mixture of fear and hope. How long had he been there? Who could abandon such a helpless creature? Sarah reached for him, but the puppy whimpered and tried to crawl away. That's when she heard it, a rustling in the underbrush. Her blood ran cold as a red fox emerged from the shadows, its amber eyes fixed on the vulnerable puppy. In the wild, foxes rarely attacked dogs, but this puppy was weak, defenseless. The fox moved closer, its muscles tensed for the strike. Sarah's camera gear was too far away, and any sudden movement could trigger an attack. The fox circled the puppy, who could barely lift his head. Sarah watched in horror as nature's harsh reality began to unfold. But then, something extraordinary happened. The fox paused, tilting its head as if listening to something only it could hear. Then, instead of attacking, it gently nudged the puppy with its snout. The puppy, too weak to be afraid, nuzzled back. Sarah held her breath, witnessing something that defied everything she knew about predator and prey. The fox began to groom the puppy, licking his matted fur with surprising tenderness. It was as if the fox recognized something in the abandoned creature, perhaps a shared understanding of survival against the odds. Sarah slowly reached for her camera, realizing she was documenting something remarkable. But more than that, she was witnessing the beginning of an impossible friendship that would challenge everything she believed about the natural world. Sarah watched in disbelief as the fox continued grooming the German shepherd puppy. The morning. Sun broke through the trees, casting golden rays on this unlikely pair. She managed to capture several photos, her hands trembling with excitement and concern. The puppy, whom Sarah mentally named Ranger, seemed to gain strength from the fox's attention. His tail gave a weak wag and he attempted to stand on shaky legs. The fox, which Sarah noticed was a female, supported him with her body, allowing him to lean against her russet fur. Sarah knew she should intervene. The puppy needed medical attention, food, and proper care. But something held her back. She had spent years documenting wildlife, and her instincts told her this was more than a chance encounter. The fox led Ranger toward the forest edge, moving slowly to accommodate his weak steps. Sarah followed at a distance, her camera recording every moment. They reached a small den hidden beneath the twisted roots of an ancient oak tree. To Sarah's amazement, the fox's own kits emerged, 3 small, curious faces peering at the strange new addition to their family. The fox, clearly the mother, nudged Ranger inside. The kits sniffed him cautiously before accepting him with playful yips. But nature has its own rules. As Sarah watched, she noticed other wildlife becoming aware of the unusual situation. A hawk circled overhead. Coyote tracks were visible in the soft earth nearby. The fox mother couldn't protect Ranger forever. Sarah faced a dilemma. Should she rescue Ranger and separate him from his unlikely protector? Or document this extraordinary relationship and see where nature led? She decided to set up a blind nearby, determined to monitor the situation. Over the next hours, she witnessed the fox mother hunt, bringing back small prey. She watched in wonder as the fox shared her catch, tearing small pieces for Ranger just as she did for her own kits. The puppy, despite his canine instincts, accepted this unusual diet. As dusk approached, Sarah made a decision. She'd return daily, bringing supplemental food for both the fox family and Ranger. She'd document their story while ensuring their survival. But she wondered, how long could this impossible arrangement last? And what would happen when Ranger grew too large for the den? The fox mother curled around all 4 babies, 3 kits and 1 puppy, as darkness fell. Sarah packed her equipment, her mind racing with questions. She had stumbled upon something extraordinary, but the challenges ahead seemed insurmountable. Tomorrow would bring new dangers, new challenges. But tonight, under the stars, a fox and a German shepherd puppy had rewritten the rules of nature, and Sarah had been lucky enough to witness it. 3 weeks had passed since Sarah first discovered Ranger with his fox family. Her daily visits had become a routine, bringing food and documenting the remarkable relationship. Ranger had grown stronger. His ribs were no longer visible. His coat was now glossy and healthy. The transformation was remarkable. The German shepherd puppy moved with confidence now, playing with the fox kits as if they were his littermates. He'd learned to stalk and pounce like a fox, though his larger paws made him clumsier than his adopted siblings. Sarah's footage captured moments that seemed impossible: Ranger grooming the kits, the fox mother teaching him to hunt mice, and all 4 youngsters tumbling together in mock battles. But she'd also documented concerning developments. Wildlife had noticed the unusual family. Coyotes prowled closer each night. Sarah had spotted a mountain lion's tracks near the den. The fox mother, whom Sarah had named Ruby, seemed increasingly anxious, her ears constantly swiveling for danger. One morning, Sarah arrived to find the den empty. Her heart sank, until she spotted movement near a fallen log. Ruby had relocated her family to a more secure location, but the journey had taken its toll. One of the fox kits was limping, and Ranger stayed close, protectively. As Sarah watched, a group of hikers appeared on a nearby trail. Their loud voices spooked Ruby, who herded her young deeper into the brush. But Ranger, confused by his dual nature, barked, a sound that didn't belong in the fox family's world of silence and stealth. The hikers heard him and started moving closer. Sarah intercepted them, explaining she was photographing wildlife and asking them to move on. But the damage was done. Ruby now knew that Ranger's dog instincts could endanger them all. That afternoon, Sarah witnessed a heartbreaking scene. Ruby tried to teach Ranger the fox's silent communication, but he couldn't suppress his natural tendency to bark and whine. The other kits had mastered their mother's lessons, disappearing into the undergrowth like shadows. Ranger, despite his best efforts, remained conspicuously visible and audible. A storm rolled in that evening. Sarah took shelter in her blind. Through the rain, she saw Ruby leading her kits to safety, but Ranger struggled to keep up. His larger body wasn't built for squeezing through fox-sized passages. For the first time, Ruby seemed torn. She returned for Ranger, nudging him forward, then raced back to check on her biological kits. The conflict was evident in her movements, maternal instinct battling against practical survival. As thunder crashed overhead, Sarah made a choice. She couldn't watch any longer. She approached the den area, calling softly to Ranger. The puppy recognized her voice and came running, but Ruby followed, clearly distressed. What followed was a moment Sarah would never forget. Ruby and Ranger touched noses. The fox mother licked the puppy's face one last time. Then, with obvious reluctance, she gathered her kits and disappeared into the storm. Ranger whimpered, trying to follow, but Sarah gently held him back. Sometimes love means letting go. Meant letting go. And Ruby had made the hardest choice a mother could make. The storm had passed, leaving the forest fresh and glistening with raindrops. Sarah sat in her truck with Ranger on her lap, both of them soaked and shivering. The puppy kept looking back toward the woods, whimpering softly for the only family he'd known. Sarah drove him to Pine Valley Veterinary Clinic, where Dr. James Thompson examined him thoroughly. "He's about 3 months old now," the vet said, amazed by Ranger's condition. "You'd never know he'd been living wild. He's actually healthier than most puppies I see." But Ranger wasn't interested in the examination. He paced the clinic restlessly, his blue eyes now showing flecks of brown, constantly searching for Ruby and his fox siblings. That night, Sarah took him to her cabin, setting up a comfortable bed. But Ranger refused to settle. For 3 days, he barely ate. He'd sit by the window, watching the forest line, occasionally letting out mournful howls that echoed his loss. Sarah's heart broke watching him grieve. She had saved his life but stolen his family. On the 4th morning, Sarah made a decision. She loaded Ranger into her truck and drove back to the forest. Maybe seeing the den would help him understand. Or perhaps, she hardly dared hope, Ruby would return. They hiked to the old den site. Ranger's nose immediately picked up familiar scents, and he began searching frantically. Sarah followed as he traced Ruby's path to the new den location. But it was empty. The fox family had moved on. As they explored the area, Sarah noticed fresh tracks, not fox but coyote. Her blood ran cold as she realized the danger. She called Ranger back, but he'd caught Ruby's scent and bounded ahead. They crested a small hill, and Sarah's worst fears materialized. 3 coyotes had cornered Ruby and her kits against a rocky outcrop. The brave fox mother stood her ground, but she was vastly outnumbered. Without hesitation, Ranger charged down the hill, his puppy bark transforming into something fiercer. Sarah screamed, knowing the coyotes could kill him easily. But Ranger didn't stop. What happened next stunned everyone. Ranger placed himself between Ruby and the coyotes, his hackles raised, teeth bared. Despite his youth, he embodied the German Shepherd's protective instincts. The coyotes, confused by this unexpected defender, hesitated. Ruby seized the moment, grabbing one kit in her mouth while the others scrambled up the rocks. But one kit, the smallest, slipped and tumbled. Back down. A coyote lunged for it. Ranger intercepted with a courage that belied his age. He caught the coyote's muzzle in his jaws, holding on despite the larger animal's thrashing. Sarah arrived, throwing rocks and shouting, adding to the chaos. The coyotes, deciding this meal wasn't worth the fight, retreated into the forest. Ranger released his grip, blood dripping from a gash on his shoulder, but his tail wagged as Ruby descended from the rocks. The reunion was touching. Ruby licked Ranger's wounds while her kits crowded around their brave protector. But Sarah noticed something different in Ruby's behavior. She kept nudging Ranger toward Sarah, as if acknowledging where he belonged. As the sun set, Sarah found herself mediating between 2 worlds. Ranger had proven his loyalty to both families, but he couldn't live in both worlds forever. The choice seemed impossible. But nature has a way of providing answers when we least expect them. The wound on Ranger's shoulder required stitches, but Sarah was more concerned about his emotional state. After the coyote encounter, he'd become protective of both her and Ruby's family, trying to patrol both worlds simultaneously. Dr. Thompson cleaned the wound while sharing surprising news. "I ran some DNA tests out of curiosity," he said. "Ranger isn't a pure German Shepherd. He's got about 15% wolf ancestry, probably from a wolf dog breeding program." Sarah's mind raced. This explained so much. Ranger's easy adaptation to wildlife, his instinctual understanding of Ruby's behavior, and the strange connection between them. He was literally caught between 2 worlds by genetics. She returned to the forest the next day to find Ruby waiting near their usual meeting spot. The fox seemed different, urgent, almost desperate. She led Sarah and Ranger deeper into the woods than ever before. They arrived at a small ravine where Sarah discovered something heartbreaking. One of Ruby's kits, the one Ranger had saved, lay, motionless, its breathing labored. The kit had been bitten by something, the wound infected and festering. Ruby looked at Sarah with an intelligence that transcended species. She'd brought them here for help. Sarah carefully examined the kit while Ranger whined anxiously. Without antibiotics, the kit would die. Sarah made a quick decision. She gently wrapped the kit in her jacket while Ruby watched, trusting but tense. They rushed to the veterinary clinic where Dr. Thompson immediately began treatment. "Fox kit with a German Shepherd escort," he mused. "You're rewriting veterinary textbooks, Sarah." For 3 days, the kit remained at the clinic. Ruby, incredibly, set up a temporary den in Sarah's backyard, keeping her other two kits close while monitoring the situation. Ranger divided. His time between house and yard, a bridge between two worlds. Dr. Thompson saved the kit, but during treatment he discovered something extraordinary. The kit showed signs of a rare genetic mutation that enhanced intelligence and adaptability. "It's like this whole family is special," he said. "Maybe that's why they accepted Ranger." When the vet returned the healthy kit to Ruby, Sarah witnessed something remarkable. Ruby didn't immediately retreat to the wild. Instead, she began bringing her kits to Sarah's property regularly, teaching them to hunt in the safer environment of the fenced yard. One evening, as Sarah watched Ranger playing with all three kits while Ruby supervised, she realized what was happening. Ruby wasn't choosing between wild and domestic life. She was creating something new, a hybrid existence that benefited everyone. The local wildlife photographer found herself at the center of an unprecedented situation. Word spread through the veterinary and wildlife communities about the fox who trusted humans and the German shepherd who lived between worlds. But fame brought danger. Sarah noticed strangers lurking near her property, some with cameras, others with more sinister intentions. Exotic animal traders would pay thousands for Ruby's genetically unique kits or for Ranger with his wolf heritage. Sarah installed security cameras and alerted local authorities, but she knew she couldn't protect them forever. The decision that had seemed impossible weeks ago now became urgent. How could she preserve this miraculous relationship while keeping everyone safe? That night, as Ruby and her kits curled up with Ranger on Sarah's porch, Sarah made calls to wildlife sanctuaries and conservation groups. Perhaps the answer wasn't choosing between worlds, but creating a new one where both could thrive. Sarah's calls to conservation groups yielded an unexpected. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, director of the Cascade Wildlife Preserve, arrived within 2 days. The preserve, spanning 500 protected acres, specialized in integrated habitat management. "I've seen your documentation," Dr. Rodriguez said, reviewing Sarah's footage. "This interspecies bonding is unprecedented. We could create a specialized habitat where they could live naturally while being protected and studied. But transitioning wouldn't be simple. Ruby had become comfortable on Sarah's property, though she remained wild at heart. The fox kits, now adolescents, showed remarkable adaptability, equally at ease with humans and guided by their wild instincts. Ranger, however, posed the biggest challenge. At 6 months old, he had developed into a stunning German shepherd with subtle wolf-like features. His protective instincts extended to both his human and fox families, making him invaluable, but complicating any relocation. Dr. Rodriguez proposed a gradual transition. A habitat would be built within the preserve to mimic Sarah's land, den, sites, forest cover, and even a small cabin where Sarah could continue documenting. The area would be secured, yet spacious enough for natural behavior. The move began with short visits. Sarah brought Ranger to the preserve, and remarkably, Ruby followed her kits in tow. The fox had come to trust Sarah's judgment completely. During one visit, they encountered the preserve's resident wildlife, including Marcus, an older German shepherd who served as patrol dog. A tense moment arose when Marcus approached. Ranger immediately placed himself between Marcus and the fox family, ready to defend. But Marcus, calm and well-trained, simply lay down, showing no threat. Within minutes, the kits curiously explored the older dog while Ruby watched with cautious approval. Marcus seemed to understand the situation instinctively, remaining still as the foxes sniffed and played. Over the following weeks, something beautiful happened. Marcus began accompanying the group, adding a second layer of protection. Preserve. Staff watched in awe as 2 German shepherds co-parented a fox family. Sarah decided to move into the preserve cottage permanently, bringing her photography equipment and research. The arrangement allowed her to document their lives while ensuring safety for all. The story reached international audiences when Sarah's documentary aired. Scientists, animal behaviorists, and nature lovers across the globe celebrated this rare example of interspecies cooperation. Donations flooded in, supporting expanded research and habitat development. Ruby's kits, now nearly grown, began establishing their own territories within the preserve, but never strayed far from Ranger. The smallest kit, whom Ranger had saved twice, remained especially close, often curled against the big dog while sleeping. One evening, Sarah sat on her cottage porch watching Ranger rest beside Ruby and her kits. Marcus patrolled the perimeter quietly. Dr. Rodriguez joined her with tea and a smile. "We've had requests from 3 other facilities wanting to replicate our model," she said. "Your documentation is revolutionizing how we think about cross-species relationships and wildlife rehabilitation." Sarah smiled, remembering that first misty morning when she believed she'd rescued a lost puppy. Instead, she discovered something that redefined her understanding of the natural world. Ranger lifted his head, his amber eyes meeting Sarah's. He had grown into a magnificent dog, but retained the wild grace Ruby had taught him. He was neither fully domestic nor entirely wild. He was something new, perhaps the future of human-wildlife coexistence. Ruby emerged from the shadows, touching noses with Ranger in their familiar greeting. In finding each other, they had found themselves, and in protecting them, Sarah had found her purpose. 2 years had passed since that fateful day on the mountain road. The Cascade Wildlife Preserve had become a beacon for interspecies harmony, with Sarah's cottage at its heart. Ranger, now a full-grown 90-pound German Shepherd, stood beside Ruby as her second generation of kits played in the meadow. The original 3 had integrated into the preserve's fox population, but still returned to visit and play with Ranger. Sarah's documentary had earned international awards, but more importantly, it inspired conservation efforts worldwide. The preserve expanded, adding zones where rescued wolf dogs and orphaned wildlife could coexist safely. Dr. Rodriguez returned one morning with visiting researchers from Germany's Max Planck Institute. "They're here to study the cognitive development of foxes raised with Ranger," she explained. "Early results suggest enhanced problem-solving abilities and social cooperation." As if on cue, one of Ruby's original kits appeared, leading her own litter toward Ranger. The big shepherd gently lowered himself, allowing the tiny foxes to climb over him. Ruby watched with what Sarah could only describe as grandmotherly pride. One researcher noted, "The foxes show elevated oxytocin production during interspecies interaction. It's as if evolution is happening right in front of us." That afternoon, a school group arrived for a tour. Children pressed against the observation windows, wide-eyed as Ranger demonstrated his role, teaching hunting techniques by blending fox stealth with canine strength. "Is he a dog or a fox?" a young boy asked. Sarah smiled. "He's both. And neither. He's family." As evening fell, Sarah prepared for a special announcement. The preserve had received funding to launch the Ranger Initiative, a program dedicated to studying and fostering healthy interspecies bonds in wildlife. Rehabilitation. Standing before staff, volunteers, and supporters, she said, "When I found Ranger, I thought I was saving an abandoned puppy. But nature has its own rules about family and belonging." Marcus had become Ranger's mentor, teaching him patrol protocols while learning fox communication in return. The preserve now housed 3 wolf-dog-fox family units, each with unique dynamics. Dr. Thompson arrived with surprising news. "Remember the genetic mutation in Ruby's kit? We've found similar markers in other foxes here. It seems that proximity to domestic canines may trigger adaptive genetic expressions. We're watching evolution respond to love." That night, Sarah returned to her favorite observation spot. Ranger sat beside her, joined by Ruby and their extended family. They watched the stars emerge in silence. Then, movement. A young coy dog, recently abandoned at the preserve gates, cautiously approached. Ranger stood, not aggressive, but calm. Ruby sniffed the newcomer and began grooming its matted fur. Sarah realized this story wasn't ending. It was growing. Each rescued animal, each improbable friendship, added another thread to a tapestry of hope, stretching beyond species. Her phone buzzed. A message from a preserve in Australia. They'd paired orphaned dingoes with dogs using her methods. Another from Japan. Foxes cooperating with Akitas in mountain rescues. You started something, Dr. Rodriguez said, joining her. A revolution in how we understand animal consciousness and love. Ranger leaned against Sarah's leg, his warmth grounding her. Ruby's kits played under the moonlight, watched by Marcus. Barriers, once natural, were fading, replaced by trust. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. More animals needing help, more boundaries to cross, more hearts to connect. But tonight, under the stars, a woman, a shepherd, and a fox had proven that family isn't defined by species, but by choice. Love had rewritten the rules of nature, and in this small corner of the world, the impossible had become beautifully, wonderfully normal. If Ranger and Ruby's journey touched your heart, then you've just witnessed something extraordinary. Proof that love and compassion can bridge even the widest gaps. Their story reminds us that family is chosen, not just born. That courage can be quiet, and that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is simply open our hearts to the unexpected. Whether you're facing your own challenges or just searching for hope, remember Ranger and Ruby, two different species who rewrote nature's rules with trust and love. If you believe in the power of stories like this, subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. Give this video a like if it moved you, and share it with someone who needs a message of hope. Your support helps us bring more life-changing stories to light. Tell us in the comments, have you ever witnessed an unlikely animal friendship? What did Ranger and Ruby teach you about love and family? In a world that often highlights our differences, the most powerful thing we can do is look for connections. Until next time, keep your heart open to the extraordinary. You never know, you might just witness your own miracle.